Unit 12, History. History is everything that happened in the past. History is important because we can learn from the past. We can understand why things happen in our world and use this information to make our lives better. We can use historical sources to learn about history. Historical sources are objects that give us information about the past. Historical sources can be photos, paintings, written documents, buildings, or objects that people used in the past. We can use measurements of time to organize information about the past. A year is made up of 12 months. A decade is made up of 10 years. A century is made up of 100 years. A millennium is made up of 1,000 years. We can divide the history into 5 main periods. Prehistory, about 2 million years ago. Ancient history, 4,000 years ago. The Middle Ages, 1,500 years ago. The Modern Age, 500 years ago. The Contemporary Age, 200 years ago. And then today. Prehistory. Prehistory is the period from when the first types of humans appeared on the earth about 2 million years ago until the invention of writing. Although people living during this period couldn't write, they did leave historical sources. These historical sources mean that we can learn about prehistory. There are 2 main periods of prehistory, the Paleolithic period and the Neolithic period. In the Paleolithic period, people were nomads. This means that they moved from place to look for food and shelter. They used stone, wood, and bones to make simple tools. In the Neolithic period, people started to live in one place and form communities. They started to grow crops and keep domestic animals. They used stone and metal to make more complex tools. Ancient history. Ancient history started more than 4,000 years ago when people invented writing. During these times, the first civilizations developed in countries such as Greece, Egypt, China, and Mexico. People in these first civilizations lived together in communities and didn't have to move from place to find food and shelter. This meant that they had time to build cities with public and private buildings, write laws, develop skills, and have jobs. One of the most important civilizations in ancient history was the Roman civilization. Roman territory was called the Roman Empire, and the capital of the Roman Empire was Rome. Although the Roman Empire ended over 1,500 years ago, we can still see remains of Roman buildings. Let's see what you know about Rome. What is the relationship between this photo and the city of Rome? This is a photo of the twins Romulus and Remus. Rome was named after Romulus. What is the name of Rome's river? Rome's river is the Tiber River. When was Rome built? They began building Rome in the year 753 BC. The Romans had a strong army, and this helped increase their territory. The Romans arrived in the Iberian Peninsula about 2,000 years ago. The Romans built outdoor theaters called amphitheaters, where people watched fights between gladiators and between people and animals. The amphitheater was the center of entertainment in Roman times. People went to the amphitheater to watch fights between gladiators and wild animals. Gladiators were people trained to fight other gladiators or wild animals such as lions and bears. The Romans built stone roads to connect cities. The Romans built bridges over rivers. This is the Roman bridge in Merida. The Romans built aqueducts to carry water from rivers and lakes to cities. This is the Roman aqueduct in Segovia. Did you know that the Romans brought their language, Latin, to the Iberian Peninsula? In science, many plants and animals have Latin names. The scientific name of an elephant is Proboscidea elephantidae. The Middle Ages. The Middle Ages began about 1,500 years ago. During this period, two civilizations lived in the Iberian Peninsula, the Christian civilization and the Islamic civilization. The Christian civilization in the Iberian Peninsula began when the Romans arrived. Christian Spain was divided into areas called kingdoms. Each of these kingdoms had a king. The Christian civilization built religious buildings such as churches and cathedrals. This is the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela. During this period, there were four groups of Christians: the nobles, the clergy, the craftsmen, and the peasants. The nobles owned land given to them by the king. They lived in castles. The clergy was the religious people of the Middle Ages. They looked after their own land and helped the poor. They could often read and write in Latin. The craftsmen were skilled workers and made products from materials such as glass and wood. The merchants traded products such as metal and textiles. The peasants worked hard on the land of the nobles. The peasants didn't receive a salary, but the nobles gave them protection. The Islamic civilization in the Iberian Peninsula began when the Muslims arrived from North Africa. The Islamic civilization built religious buildings such as mosques. This is the mosque in Córdoba. The Modern Age. The Modern Age began about 500 years ago. Small kingdoms came together to form big countries with one king, and these countries started to explore the world. This period was a time of discovery and scientific invention. Inventions like the compass and more accurate maps meant that people could travel to new places without getting lost and discover new lands and new products. In 1492, an explorer called Christopher Columbus sailed west in his ship. He wanted to travel around the earth to reach Asia in the east. But instead, Columbus traveled west and reached the New World, which we now call America. An important invention of the modern age was Gutenberg's printing press. This invention meant that it was quicker and cheaper to produce books and maps. The Contemporary Age. The Contemporary Age began about 200 years ago and was a time of industry and changes in society. New inventions like the steam engine changed the way that people lived and worked. The steam engine made work quicker and easier. It was used in machines and transport. Factories made mass-produced products. People moved to towns and cities for work, and urban populations increased. Cities grew and changed. There were new streets and shops. There were services such as schools, hospitals, and public transport. There were also important scientific inventions during this period. During this period, electricity was discovered. Thomas Alva Edison invented the light bulb. Inventions in medicine were the X-ray and vaccinations. Inventions in communication were the radio and the telephone.